Did you know that nearly half of the movie audience is secretly rooting for the villain than the hero? Welcome back, fellow mages, to the Grounded Mage, where we explore how myth and magic exist in everyday life, and also how we can't seem to stop crushing on fictional characters who would 100% ruin our lives. Yes, almost half of us watching movies are like, oh no, I'm not supposed to be cheering for him, am I? But we are. And you know that whisper in your head that goes, just let him burn it all down. Yeah, that's what today's all about. Today, we're diving into a very spicy topic: why I can't stop rooting for the villain. And don't lie, you do too. We all do. Psychologists have actually found that the more morally strict we think we are, the more likely we are to root for the villain. Which means if you've ever said something like, I would never deceive others just to get my way, there's a decent chance your subconscious is like, girl, don't lie. Deep down, you want to be Loki. And here's where it gets interesting. We are more drawn to morally gray characters when we're going through stress, burnout, or identity confusion. Translation: if you're currently rooting for Magneto, it might not just be because he looks cool bending metal. It might be because part of you is tired of playing by the rules. Part of you wants to unleash something. Part of you wants to stop being so damn good all the time. So today, we're exploring why we feel like villains are telling the truth we're not allowed to say out loud. We're also diving into projection, envy, suppressed desire, and the shadow self that Loki, Magneto, and Maleficent embody for us. And listen, don't worry, this isn't therapy, but it might explain why you've accidentally built an entire personality around the phrase, honestly, the villain had a point. I mean, think about it. Loki shows up with one smirk and suddenly everyone forgets he tried to destroy New York. Magneto pushes a coin through Shaw's head and we're like, honestly, valid. Maleficent curses a baby and we go, wait, hear her out. Why? Because villains embody something powerful. Our projection, our envy, our suppressed desires. They're the characters doing all the things we wish we could do, but we don't. So today, we're going into the shadow. Young would be proud. And we're going to explore why our psyches light up when villains walk onto the screen. So let's get into it. Let's start where every good story and every bad date begins: projection. Projection is the psychological process where we take feelings we don't like in ourselves and pin them onto someone else. Shout out to Freud, who gave us projection, repression, and the general belief that everything is your mother's fault. Psychologist Richard Lazarus once described projection as the emotional boomerang we throw away, hoping it doesn't come back. Spoiler alert, it always does. So, enter Loki, the trickster who mirrors our chaos. Loki is a trickster, a liar, a chaos machine wrapped in leather and daddy issues. All of these are considered bad traits, things we don't like in other people. So then, why do we root for him? We root for him because Loki is the part of us that wants to be clever, messy, unhinged, and unapologetic. He is the archetype of the unruly self, made popular by Sheila Marie. That's the version of us who doesn't shrink themselves to keep the peace, apologize for being too much, or contort to earn approval. The unruly self advocates for a whole and compassionate acceptance of your diversity. Now, Loki is not the most compassionate person, but it's clear he doesn't mind who he is. He has fully accepted his abilities and he's mastered them to help him get what he wants. Being the unruly version of yourself often leads to disruption and chaos, something that follows Loki everywhere he goes. But these disruptions are part of personal and social transformations, leading to a more integrated self and potentially challenging existing power structures. Loki challenged the gods all the time, and his shenanigans often helped them see things in a different way. He helped them evolve. Loki marches to the beat of his own drum. He doesn't allow others to center their stories onto him. He doesn't reject who he is. In fact, he embraces it. He challenges the expectations that have been put on him, and he is very in tune with his main character energy. When Loki breaks the rules, he acts out impulses that we repress every day. You know, when you think things like, what if I didn't pretend to be okay today? What if I told the truth that would ruin Thanksgiving dinner? What if I was a little selfish? Just once. Loki would do all of these things, especially the second one. I mean, am I the only one picturing him sitting next to Thor at a grand table full of fellow gods, waiting for the opportune moment to spill somebody's secret? It wouldn't be the first time, and he'd have the best time doing it too. In all of this, Loki becomes the mirror for the boldness we wouldn't dare own. He's a villain because we've decided that those parts of our personality are rejected by society. Someone else needs to possess them so that we can go about our days unjudged. We root for Loki because his mischievousness and lack of a filter is something we wish we could master ourselves and feel no shame about it. What's something you always hold back on because you think other people would isolate you for it? Let's move on to that angry little green guy on your shoulder. Envy. Envy gets a bad rap, but psychologist Richard Smith, who is trustworthy because he literally specializes in envy, says that envy often points at the version of ourselves we're actually trying to become. And villains? Oh, they are dripping in enviable traits. Confidence, power, freedom, self definition, their I said what I said energy. Magneto is the perfect example of a villain that we envy. A Holocaust survivor who decides never again. His entire identity is built around refusing helplessness, shifting his mindset from I can't to I will. Now, do we condone genocide by metal bending? Of course not. But do we envy the clarity of someone who refuses to be a victim ever again? Absolutely. Magneto channels the envy we feel when someone lives with uncompromising boundaries. He is the embodiment of the self that says, no, I won't shrink. No, I won't be quiet. And no, I won't trust the systems that were built to crush me. Psychologists call this reactive empowerment, when people respond to past trauma by gaining power in any way that they can. The goal of reactive empowerment is to move toward a more empowered state by acting from presence rather than fear. Magneto moved away from helplessness by focusing on the things he could control, which for him was his immense power. It's a direct physical manifestation of his deep-seated desire to ensure that he and his fellow mutants are never again powerless victims of a fearful, oppressive majority. We envy Magneto because he lives on the other side of fear, in a world where he will never be hurt again. And let's be honest, who doesn't want that? Aside from his incredible abilities, Magneto also possesses an incredible level of intelligence in many fields, including genetic engineering, which makes him a brilliant strategist and tactician. Magneto possesses a lot of other traits that we could be envious of. His charisma and leadership abilities, for one. His natural leadership allows him to inspire extreme loyalty in his followers. His unwavering conviction, he has an unflinching commitment to his goal: protect the mutant race by any means necessary. His moral complexity and depth, his ethics are summed up as this: the ends justify the means. This anti hero perspective is what makes him one of the best written characters in all of comic books. And of course, his resilience and survival instinct. Magneto survived not one, but two Holocausts. He has a deep understanding of history and a powerful will to make sure that his people do not suffer the same fates that he has witnessed in his past. Magneto is definitely not a perfect example of a role model, but he does possess traits that are useful in everyday life. It's useful to be resilient. It's useful to stand your ground in your beliefs. And it's definitely useful to look for things in your life that you do have control over. Just imagine what Magneto could be if he toned down the extreme violence in his agenda. Is there something that makes you feel powerless? Is there a way you could take a page from Magneto's book to have a little more control in your life? Now we arrive at the heart of this episode, the shadow. Carl Jung, yes, I know, we're back to Jung, described the shadow as the parts of ourselves that we disown because they don't fit our good person identity. Actually, we deep dived into this weeks ago, so go check out How Villains Are the Only Ones Telling Us the Truth to learn more about that. After you finish this episode, of course. But here's the twist. The shadow also holds our vitality, our instincts, and our aliveness. A great example of a villain who puts her best shadow forward is Maleficent. She is shadow energy embodied. She's sovereign, powerful, emotionally honest, and unwilling to soften herself for comfort. She's punished for it, of course. Patriarchy has entered the chat. So she becomes the villain. But really, she just embodies what women are taught to suppress: wrath, authority, magic, boundaries, sexuality. In the reimagined Maleficent films, she becomes even more interesting. A character whose villainy comes from betrayal, not inherent evil. And that taps straight into our desires to stand our ground, fight back when we're wronged, not be forgiving before we're ready, and take up space without asking permission. In the original animated version of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent is presented as the mistress of all evil. She gives herself this title. She's an awe-inspiring and purely wicked villain who is proud of her evil nature. When we were kids, she was terrifying. As adults, we look at her a little more and we realize that we actually envy many things about her. Things like her unapologetic power. She's an incredibly powerful sorceress who can teleport, manipulate matter, and turn into a massive dragon. This raw, unbridled power is captivating to watch. And the fact that she doesn't hold back goals. She also has an awe-inspiring presence. With her elegant design, commanding voice, and dramatic flair, she has an iconic, captivating presence that few villains can match. She also possesses proactive villainy. Unlike other villains who sit around waiting for something to happen, she is actively working to ensure that her curse is fulfilled, which shows a certain level of competence and determination that can be admired, even if it is in the service of evil. Psychologist June Tegney, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who studies moral emotion, points out that suppressed anger becomes distorted, chaotic, and explosive. Maleficent is that truth made mythic. She is all of the things I said before, of course, but she also explodes and lashes out because she feels excluded. I mean, good for her. I mean, like, not the whole cursing a baby thing, because that was a bit far, but you know what I mean. She said exactly what she was feeling, which is what most of us want to do and never do. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we hide away, the part of ourselves that makes us question, am I really a good person? So here it is. These traits that we keep in the shadows aren't bad as long as we're using them for good instead of evil. Maleficent lets us taste the fantasy of being fully and fiercely ourselves. What's part of your shadow? Something you think others would reject if you put it on display. When we put all of this together, projection, envy, and suppressed desire, we start to see why villains feel like home. Because villains don't pretend. They don't force themselves into society's polite little boxes. They don't hide their wounds or shrink their power. They express what we suppress, and sometimes what we're ashamed to want. Villains are the characters who say the quiet thing out loud, and part of us craves that. Psychologists like James Hollis, huge in Jungian circles, say that the shadow isn't the enemy, it's the unlived self. Villains remind us that there is a version of ourselves that we haven't met yet, one with teeth and fire and boundaries that don't apologize. So, the next time you find yourself rooting for Loki's latest betrayal, or Magneto's morally questionable world domination, or Maleficent turning a king into a quivering panic attack, ask yourself, what part of me is trying to speak through this character? Because villain love isn't about loving destruction. It's about recognizing the truth that we've been taught to hide. If this episode hit home for you or made you feel slightly called out, share it with a friend who always chooses the villain in every franchise. You know who they are. Don't forget to leave a comment, like this video, and if you really like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. You can also check out the videos that are linked down below. One of them is what I mentioned earlier about how villains are the only ones telling us the truth, and the other video is how the X-Men teach us to accept our differences. Until next week, fellow mages, make it make magic.